Ever find yourself thinking like, huh, what is it about some guys that just seems to, I don't know, make them so good at attracting women? Well, you sent over this YouTube transcript. It's from Jessica O's, and she goes right at that question. So I figured, hey, perfect for a deep dive.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting one. Jessica O, she kind of lays out her perspective on, what qualities, what behaviors guys are doing that women are supposedly finding attractive.
Yeah, and we're not just going to run down the list here. She gives us 12 specific things, but I think it'd be cool to dig a little deeper. What's the why behind these things?
Mm,
What does it tell us about relationships in general? Maybe even push back a little on some of her ideas.
I like it. Let's get into it.
Okay, so point number one, knowing how to give direction and guidance. What do you think when you first hear that? What comes to mind?
Well, it's funny. Right off the bat, she kind of critiques that, classic man explaining thing. She's saying just jumping in with solutions with opinions, that can actually be a turnoff. Why do you think that is?
I mean, who wants to feel like they're constantly being told what to do?
Right.
Right. And she makes a big point about only giving advice when it's asked for.
Right. Yeah.
Otherwise, it can come across as like you think the other person's incompetent or something.
Yeah, exactly. You keep giving advice that wasn't asked for, and it can start to chip away at someone's confidence. Like you're saying, hey, you're not capable of figuring this out yourself. She's suggesting that maybe a better, more attractive quality is being a good listener, being empathetic. Unless someone specifically says, hey, what do you think I should do? Sometimes the best thing you can do is just be there to hear them out.
Yeah, totally. So it's less about being the fix-it guy and more about being like a supportive partner, someone they can rely on. Now, point number two goes a little old school. Knowing how to treat her like a lady. We're talking opening doors, pulling out chairs, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
What do you make of these, almost chivalrous gestures?
Well, the video argues that even though they might seem old-fashioned, they still matter to a lot of people. You don't see them as much anymore. So when you do, it stands out. It's like a little sign of respect, a little bit of effort. It makes you wonder, though, is it about the action itself or is it about something deeper?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like, is it just about the door, or is it about showing that you're paying attention, that you care?
Mm-hmm.
And she says in the video that guys who get this, like, basic stuff right, they're in high demand.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes you think, what other little things, maybe not so traditional, could you do today that carry that same message of respect?
That's a really good point. Maybe it's not about the specific action, but the intention behind it, showing that you're thinking about the other person's comfort, their well-being. Now, let's get into something that's super important for any healthy relationship. Temperature control.
Yeah, this one feels like a no-brainer. She's basically saying, don't lose your cool around her. And she makes a direct link.
Mm-hmm.
How you treat other people is how you'll eventually treat her.
Right.
Makes sense, right?
Totally. And it's understandable. Anyone would be concerned about someone with a volatile temper. She talks about how, from a woman's perspective, seeing you blow up at someone else, it plants that seed of doubt. What if that's me someday?
Right, and it's not just about, like, big blow-ups either. She talked about patience, even when you're disagreeing. Arguments happen, it's normal, but it's about controlling your reactions, not letting things escalate, those hurtful words, which she calls adult temper tantrums.
Yeah, there's a big difference between confiding in your partner when you're frustrated and just taking your anger out on them. And she's saying, don't dump all your problems on her. It's about healthy communication, not just venting.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, this next one sounds fun. Knowing how to surprise and challenge her. How do you think that keeps a relationship fresh and exciting?
She uses this really cool analogy. She says a good relationship, it's like a roller coaster. It's got those unexpected ups and downs, keeps things interesting. So what kind of surprises and challenges are we talking about here?
Well, she mentions trying new things together, being adventurous, maybe even, the bedroom. And she connects that, like taking risks together to building trust, which is interesting. But she also talks about little things, like random acts of kindness, a surprise gift, a handwritten note, something unexpected.
Yeah, those little things can go a long way. And she points out it's the spontaneity that makes them special. It's not like a birthday where it's expected.
Right, exactly.
And that challenge aspect, it's not about picking fights or anything. It's about preventing things from getting stale, taking each other for granted. She even says, don't make things too easy, or you could end up becoming a doormat. It's like a healthy challenge can actually help someone grow.
Right, so it's about pushing boundaries together in a good way, not creating unnecessary drama. Speaking of things that can be good or bad, let's talk compliments. She's got some pretty specific advice on how to do them right.
Yeah, and her first piece of advice is don't overdo it. You know, those generic compliments, you hear them all the time, they lose their meaning. She's saying a well-timed, specific compliment, it's going to have a much bigger impact. What do you think?
I think she's right. It's like the less you hear something, the more valuable it becomes.
Yeah,
She also says it makes you seem less clingy, which is never a bad thing.
yeah.
And when you do give a compliment, it feels more genuine, more meaningful.
Yeah, I see that. And it's not just about looks either. She reminds us to appreciate what someone does, their character, those kinds of things. Noticing and acknowledging that stuff, I think it goes a long way in the long run.
For sure. Now let's get down to the everyday stuff, those little things that can make or break a relationship. She calls it knowing how to consider her needs. And she starts with a pretty funny example.
Oh, yeah, the toilet seat. Classic.
I know, right? But it's a good way to illustrate the point. It's about being aware of those little things that might bug your partner.
Exactly. And she points out that sometimes guys might brush those things off, like, oh, it's no big deal. But for the other person, it can be a constant source of annoyance. It's about respecting their space, their experience.
Right. And she even suggests figure out those pet peeves early on before they become bigger issues. It shows you're paying attention. You care about their comfort.
Absolutely. Okay, moving on to a point that I think speaks to a sense of security and support, knowing how to protect her. What does that really mean in a relationship?
Well, she says it's about standing up for her, when it's the right thing to do, not letting people walk all over her, being her advocate.
Right.
But it's important to note, she's not saying you should be picking fights all the time. It's about knowing when to step in and when to let things go.
Yeah, and she acknowledges that disagreements are going to happen. Nobody agrees on everything. The important thing, she says, is to handle those disagreements privately. Never criticize her in public. Why do you think that's so damaging?
I mean, it feels like a betrayal. It makes the other person feel embarrassed, disrespected. It's like you're airing your dirty laundry for everyone to see. So I think protecting her also means protecting the relationship, keeping that trust and respect intact.
That's a really good point. It's about creating that safe space where you can work through things together behind closed doors. Now, point number 8 is about knowing how to invite her into your life. How do you translate that into action?
It's about sharing your world with her, right? She talks about letting her in on your hobbies, your interests, even if they're not things she's super into. It's about building a life together.
Yeah, I like that. And she says you might even discover new things you both enjoy, which keeps things interesting. But she also talks about the importance of supporting her goals, her dreams, no matter how hard they might seem. She uses this phrase, be her #1 fan, which I think is so powerful. What do you think that kind of support does for a relationship?
I think it creates this incredible bond. Knowing that someone's got your back, they believe in you, that makes a huge difference. And it goes both ways, that mutual admiration and support. Okay, let's move on to something that's essential for any relationship, romantic or otherwise. Knowing how to listen effectively.
Oh, yeah, so important. And she says, especially early on, keep the conversations fun, lighthearted. Don't just dump all your baggage on someone right away.
Right. It's about building that comfort level first. But she's realistic. She says in a long-term relationship, you're going to be listening to all sorts of stuff. Some of it you might not find that interesting. But the key is to be present. Show genuine interest, even if it's not your favorite topic.
Exactly. Give her the space to talk, whether she needs advice or just needs to vent. She's going to share more of herself over time, build that trust. She even mentions specific techniques, like repeating back what she's saying. What do you think that does?
It shows you're really listening, not just zoning out. By repeating back those key phrases, you're making sure you understand and you're making her feel heard, which can be really powerful. Okay, point number 10 is about walking the walk, not just talking the talk. Keeping your word. Seems pretty straightforward, but she takes a pretty hard line on this one.
She does. She uses being on time as an example, and she's basically saying there's almost no excuse for not showing up when you said you would. What message do you think that sends?
It shows you're reliable, that you respect the other person's time. Your word means something. But she does make one important exception.
Oh, yeah, communication. Even if something totally unavoidable comes up, let the other person know as soon as possible. She says it's better to be late with an explanation than to just not show up at all. It's about taking responsibility.
Absolutely. Okay, this one's about making someone feel truly valued, knowing how to give her undivided attention. In today's world where everyone's constantly distracted, this can be a real challenge.
It can. And she's saying, put the phone away, close the laptop, be present in the moment. She even uses the example of being on a date and scrolling through your phone. super rude, right?
Totally.
But when you give someone your full attention, it makes them feel like they're the most important thing in the world at that moment. She even tells a story about a guy who made her feel incredible just by listening, really listening.
It's powerful, right? It
Yeah,
shows
yeah.
you're truly engaged, you care about what they have to say.
Okay.
Okay, last but not least, knowing how to buy her the right gifts. Now, this isn't about spending a ton of money, right?
Right, exactly. She actually says even if you've agreed not to exchange gifts, a little something thoughtful can go a long way. It's about the thought behind it, not the price tag.
For sure. She even says a homemade gift can be more meaningful than something generic you bought at the store.
Yeah.
It's just you put in some effort, you were thinking about her specifically.
Yeah, and she makes this interesting point at the end about how someone reacts to a thoughtful gift. It can actually tell you a lot about their intentions.
Right, like, if they don't seem to appreciate the thought behind it, maybe they're more interested in material things than in the relationship itself.
It's a good point.
Okay, so let's recap. Jessica always 12 points for what makes a guy attractive. Offering guidance, but only when asked. Treating her like a lady, those little gestures of respect, keeping your temper in check, even when things get tough. Knowing how to surprise her, challenge her in a good way. Giving genuine, well-timed compliments. Considering her needs, those little everyday things that can make a big difference. Protecting her, standing up for her when it matters, inviting her into your life, sharing your passions and supporting hers, listening effectively, really being present in those conversations, keeping your word, being someone she can rely on, giving her your undivided attention, making her feel like she's the only person in the room, and finally, putting some thought into those gifts, showing her that you care. It's a pretty comprehensive list, covering a lot of ground.
It does. It touches on a lot of important aspects of relationships in general, I think.
So to everyone listening, think about these points. Which ones resonated with you the most? How do they fit into your own understanding of attraction and connection? And hey, maybe check out some of Jessica O's other videos. She's got a lot of interesting things to say. It's definitely given us a lot to think about today.
Absolutely.
All right, well, thanks for diving in with me on this one.
It was my pleasure.
We'll catch you next time for another deep dive.
See you then. Bye.